Hello there, and a very warm welcome. My name is Dave Litton from the Projex Academy, and on behalf of myself and my business partner Nick, we are delighted that you have decided to invest in our Agile Project Management Masterclass. Now, this is based on the DSDM Agile Project Framework, and as such is a leading and well-proven Agile approach that provides all of the governance and rigour you would need, along with the agility and flexibility that project managers and organisations demand today from an Agile approach. Now, the advantage of our Agile Project Management Masterclass is that it can be used either standalone or combined with other recognised methodologies, such as Prince2, or Managing Successful Programs, or the Project Management Professional qualification. Now, it's an ideal wrapper for simpler Agile approaches to ensure that the whole project lifecycle is addressed. Now, the value in our Agile Project Management Masterclass is that there are no nasty exams to take, as this can be applied in just about any type of project, in any environment and in any industry. The advantage of you choosing to study the DSDM Agile Project Framework is that it is a proven, battle-hardened approach and has already been responsible for the successful delivery of numerous projects around the world, and has proved its value in being able to address the business need, mitigate risk, and maximise your return on investment. Our DSDM Agile Project Framework is essential for anyone wishing to become a proven project management professional with knowledge and skills of applying the Agile framework that is demanded by so many employers in today's market, and as such represents the very latest knowledge in learning Agile delivery project success. So having said that, let's you and I have a quick look at the streaming videos that are included within our Agile Project Management Masterclass. Don't worry, I won't go through all of these in detail, and you'll find this diagram in your accompanying handbooks. You can see we're on Module 1 here, top left, with a gentle introduction to the Agile framework. Note that we cover all key elements of a competent Agile professional, and there are 27 video modules in total. Accompanying these video modules, there are handy handbooks that you can print out and use as a reference, since they contain the graphics of every single slide that's used in all 27 modules. Also included here are helpful and energising quizzes to check that you've fully understood each of our video modules. Plus, in addition, at the end of each module, you'll find a useful checklist of the key learnings that we will have covered within each module. I strongly recommend that you first print out the handbooks, as you will find them quite useful to make notes as I take you through the various video modules. So once again, thank you so much for investing in our Agile Project Management Masterclass. Let's you and I roll our sleeves up and get stuck straight in to Module 1. First, let's look at the way in which traditional projects have been run. Now, traditional project management, of course, has the project manager who would normally create detailed work plans at the beginning of the project. It is here that the requirements, specification, functionality, if you will, are understood in detail at the very beginning so that detailed work plans can be generated. What the project manager is trying to achieve here is to ensure that the project runs in a very predictive way by virtue of having full detail at the very beginning. So the project manager will plan, manage, monitor, report and control against the technical team who will be making the specialist products, whatever they happen to be. This style of management is often called command and control, and as I've said here, it forms the backbone of traditional project management styles and approaches. Also, traditional projects tend to be split into stages or phases in a fairly predictive manner, first of all starting off with analysis, then design, then build, then test, with a review at each point. The analogy has been taken here that it is very similar to a railway journey, where the train, of course, is travelling on preset tracks. It's fairly predictable and can be planned in advance in detail. Now, against these detailed work plans, the controls the project manager will use is to track work effort, usually using percentage complete. but very often the percentage complete figure is, for example, against the analysis stage phase or the design phase or stage, and so on and so forth. And so therefore there's a fair amount of ambiguity about what percentage complete means in terms of true progress. The project manager will give out the work by stage and or by work packages, where the technical team will create the products and report back to the project manager. Any deviation from the plan, the project manager will take some form of corrective action to bring the actual work back on track and thereby forecast that the project is intended to complete as per the original plan. As we know from recent history, this is not always possible. Another problem with this is that it uses a methodology called waterfall. The idea being here is that once you complete analysis and it's reviewed and agreed to progress, in effect you then go on to design, and you will not ever then return to analysis because, just like water, it can't flow uphill. So there's no looking back. Of course, in the real world, we know that, for example, when you get into build, you may need to go back and redesign certain aspects. And that, of course, is one of many problems using the waterfall approach. As a matter of software project success and failure, figures have been published where something like 24% of projects have indeed failed outright, whereas a staggering 44% of projects were challenged. In other words, they completed, but they were not exactly what the customer or users were expected, and only 32% of the projects actually succeeded. So clearly using the waterfall approach has had its fair amount of problems when splitting a project into stages and or phases. Let's have a quick look next then at the Agile approach using Agile Project Management. And I'd like to quote a friend of mine who said to me in a recent email, 90% of success in business is the faith that even though you can't see the whole path, taking the step you can see in the moment and doing that in every moment is enough, as you'll never have the whole picture until you complete. Well, Megan wasn't talking actually about agile projects at all, but merely making a general point. But unknown to her, she was actually quoting an important philosophy of agile projects, in that you could never know the full requirements until you're partway through the project. So with Agile, we start off with the outline requirements only, knowing full well that we don't yet have the complete picture. We'll also see shortly how Agile projects create the products themselves in an incremental and iterative manner. And here we can see the idea behind an iterative manner, where you don't complete a product in one cycle. You start off by identifying what needs to be done, you then plan for it, you evolve the products, you review progress, and then you continue round this loop. Now the outline requirements means the project manager produces a high-level plan. And at this high level, the product is then created iteratively and incrementally. There's another change for the project manager, is that the project manager merely facilitates the team, who are, by the way, empowered. They're given sufficient power and authority to do what needs to be done. So already you can see it, there's several important differences. Taking outline requirements, producing a high-level plan, and create the product iteratively and incrementally, while the project manager merely does everything necessary to focus on the total environment within which the team work and ensure that they have everything they need in order to complete the products and to meet their goals. The project manager in this type of environment is merely used as an escalation path when the team feel that they have deviated too far from the plan or need some decision or action from further up the chain. So let's just remind ourselves what the word iterative means, since we'll be using it continuously throughout the remaining modules. It actually comes from the word alter. The idea here is that you don't finish a feature in one go, but produce a best first pass for a product and then review it. Then improve it and keep iterating until it's done. So what does incremental mean? This comes from the term to add onto. Build as much as you need right now, don't over-engineer it or add flexibility. Then repeat and produce another piece of the final tested product. Then add on to the existing chunk and build upon it. The focus here is only the requirements that have yet to be implemented as you gradually add on to the product itself. If this was software, then it would be extra lines of code until the entire piece of software fulfilled its full function. You can see that if you were building a house, this would be done anyway, quite naturally, incrementally. First of all the frame, then the roof, then gradually the rooms and the fittings, and so on and so forth. You certainly wouldn't build a house in an iterative manner, but there are iterative parts of building a house. For example, if you had a tradesperson come in to carry out a fitted kitchen, almost certainly you'll have an understanding of what the customer wants in terms of features and cupboards and what have you, but actually installing it may be done in an iterative manner. It's important you understand the difference between these two approaches and see that they both pull together to allow agile projects to produce the products. And let me make the point that the focus in Agile is on the products themselves rather than in traditional project management, where you might focus on percentage complete of a certain aspect, such as design is 30% complete. But I haven't quite finished this overview of what Agile Project Management is. Something you need to get used to is increments, obviously coming from incremental. These are units of work that will be project managed, and each increment is developed iteratively. Here's an example. Imagine we're in stage 1 of a project here, and we'll have increment 1, increment 2, increment 3, and so on. But there's a few more differences yet to be discussed. One of them, which we'll learn about when we look at the Agile organization, is that all of this planning and the creating of the products is done in very close collaboration with the business and customer. Indeed, we'll see how business representatives are not only on the project, but also within the development team themselves. Now you must be asking yourself, if the project manager merely facilitates the team, who does the planning? Well, you've guessed it, it's the development team themselves that create the plan. And as you get towards the end of a particular stage, and so many increments here, you would produce the next stage plan. Also, of course, at the end of each increment, the development team would create the plan for the next increment, and so on. So having created the next stage plan, and the remaining stages started. And it's in this way that Agile creates ultimately the end product in an iterative and incremental manner. The analogy here is a sailing trip. If you set off from South Africa, for example, and intend to hit the south coast of Australia, then you have an end goal, but your journey path is less predictable. And that's a very good analogy with an Agile project. Now, many methods give little guidance on Agile project management, apart from DSDM Atern. And by the way, the word Atern comes from the Arctic tern, which is a particular bird seen as very agile. Now, DSDM and DS with a reverse D, M and Atern are all registered trademarks of Dynamic Systems Development Method Limited in the United Kingdom and other countries. In a similar way, Agile PM is also the trademark of Dynamic Systems Development Method Limited in the United Kingdom and other countries. Now, typically, an Atern project will deliver an operational solution within 3 to 6 months, sometimes only within weeks. There is a need which Atern recognises to integrate time to market into corporate processes and standards plus project management processes. And as I've said already, an Agile project can be applied to any industry or project type. It's worth recognizing here that another driver behind using an Agile project is that it will release business benefits early into the operational areas, and in this way improve return on investment, as opposed to a traditional project which will only release the whole of the solution at the end of the project. We'll look more at this when we discuss the Agile business case in a later module. It's an absolute fact that more projects fail due to people issues than to technology, which is why Agile takes great care to ensure that the organization within an Agile project includes all of the right people with not just the right knowledge, skills and experience, but also with the appropriate levels of power and authority so that they can truly feel empowered in carrying out their responsibilities on an Agile project. To go back to something I said earlier, nothing is built perfectly first time. And of course, an Agile project can be applied to any industry and any project type. Having said that, it's probably not likely that a typical construction project, for example, an office block or a bridge, would start off without having a full understanding of the requirements, functionality, and so on and so forth. And in such a project, the application of Agile might only be to certain specific areas, but certainly down at the team level, there's certainly some scope for using, at the very least, some of the Agile techniques, such as facilitated workshops, to such a project. Remember also that Atern is independent of tools and techniques. It's also worth saying that other methodologies, such as Prince2 for example, can be merged very successfully with Agile. What I'd like to do now is to see where the Agile Project Management part of the puzzle fits in terms of methodologies and disciplines. Here we can see four aspects of any typical project: the management of the project itself, the project life cycle from beginning to end, the management of the team within the project, and the design of the products, for example, within engineering and delivery. We can see quite clearly that the Agile Project Management Handbook will focus on these two aspects. So we would not expect some of the details within team management and engineering and delivery to be covered. That said, it does indeed cover the whole life cycle. Let's complete this picture and you'll see the point I'm making here. Here's where DSDM would sit. Notice it covers just a little of project management, but its scope goes on to include right down into engineering and delivery. So you can see the extra value added here by developing the Agile Project Management aspect within and above DSDM. Completing the picture, let's look at see where Scrum fits. Scrum, of course, is based on the rugby term, and Scrum itself focuses on how teams work together in order to develop a product, how to make them effective and collaborate as a team and become highly productive. The main focus of Scrum, therefore, is on team management and the specialist development team within an Agile project. There's also XP, whose main focus is within engineering delivery. The main aim within XP is it contains a simple form of planning and tracking projects. It's designed to evolve around a small team which contains appropriate customer focus with the objective of providing business value. And finally, Lean, which covers a similar scope as XP. The main objective of Lean is to eliminate waste and to reduce unnecessary functionality, which has the advantage of reducing delays with a focus on reducing bureaucracy. So here then is the big picture, and as you know, the remainder of this primer will focus on the Agile Project Management Handbook aspects covering project management and the project lifecycle. But don't worry, as you'll recall, we'll be covering a lot of the techniques and practices within an Agile project. So let's now focus on how DSDM helps, starting with communication problems. It's a well-known fact that poor communication is just about the #1 cause of projects failing, either totally or to some degree or another. And the way in which DSDM helps is that it emphasizes human interaction. One of the techniques we'll be looking at is facilitated workshops. It emphasizes visualization by the use of modeling and prototyping, also covered in a later module. And as we'll learn when we look at the Agile organization, it contains clearly defined roles and responsibilities, both at management level and within the development team. It helps avoid late delivery. Why? Well, the DSDM approach and practices are geared to coming in on time. I shall show you later in this module how time is fixed and missing time deadlines is not an option. How does this happen? Well, DSDM harnesses long and short-term goals, and as I've said, believes that compromising a deadline is not an option. You'll see how that works very powerfully within something called time boxes, one of the techniques and practices to be covered later. Wrong business solution is delivered. How does DSDM help? Well, it encourages collaboration to enable rich communication while embracing and encouraging change. Unlike on a traditional project where a change process is set up but where change is seen as not a good thing. Agile actively encourages change. Why? Because we know at the beginning of the project, not everything will be known. And only after we've travelled a certain way through the project will it become clear exactly, for example, what the full requirements are. So it encourages change and expects it, leading to a deeper business need, which is of paramount importance within an Atern project. I've already mentioned that business representatives play a key part within the Agile project organisation. Unused features. There's a term that you may have heard of called scope bloat. And what that is, it's the introduction of unnecessary product features in a project. The reason this is an almost natural occurrence in traditional projects is that when creating the full set of requirements, what is normally covered there is everything that the customer or users need and everything they think they may need, including everything they want and everything they think they may want. So it's a natural feature of traditional projects that the requirements will include far more than is actually necessary when it comes to hand over to the actual users in the operational environment. Indeed, some studies have been covered which shows that only around 7% of features are always used within a piece of software, for example. 13% is used often, 16% of the features are only used sometimes, 19%, that's nearly 1/5 of the features in a product are rarely used, and a massive 45% of features is never used. I'm sure you and I can think of excellent products such as Microsoft Word, where, speaking for myself, I've got by over many years by barely using 10% of the features that are necessary. Now, that's not wrong in and of itself, and I'm certainly not criticizing Microsoft Word, but I'm merely saying that if I'd had to develop that on the basis of a project, I'd have done a pretty poor job when considering the actual focused users that would be using that application. So businesses tend to overprescribe their needs during a project, leading to lots of unused features. However, by prioritizing business needs, we'll learn about a technique called Moscow. DSDM avoids project delays. I know it seems unbelievable at this early point, but we'll learn later how that works. Another aspect of how DSDM helps, the business is changing their mind. Well, that's how it might feel from the project. But you see, how it helps is that DSDM embraces change, as I've said. It encourages it. It believes it's a good thing. Why? Because as I've said at the very beginning, not all of the requirements will be fully understood. So change within a project should be expected and encouraged. DSDM enables change through iterative development. Do you remember that term? With regular reviews. Changing requirements is the result of improved understanding. That's the key word there. So DSDM expects it and plans for it. All of this is built into your Agile project. Think of any reasonable undertaking that you and your family may have done, booking a summer vacation holiday, choosing the location, the type of accommodation, the recreation choices and so on. When you first start to discuss it, it's highly likely that by the time you book the holiday, there'll be some aspects of the requirements that will have changed. And so it is for all projects. Delayed or late return on investment. Now, business benefits usually decrease over time. So if your project is a traditional one where all the deliveries will only be delivered at the project end, this will automatically reduce return on investment. Let me explain. Since every business case is a trade-off between benefits on one hand and cost and time on the other, and we've all heard the expression that time is money. So those investing in the project, the longer they have to wait until they get a return on their investment, the less the return on investment will be. And if you have to wait until the end of, let's say, a 1-year project until you start to get your benefits, then that's a whole year without the benefits in place. So ROI will be lower with a traditional project. But with an Agile project, Atern uses incremental delivery to get the most important and valuable features implemented into the business as soon as possible. Doesn't that make sense? So if you then did your ROI calculations, you'd find that it would be higher with an Agile type project, all other things being equal. Over-engineering, sometimes called gold plating. Now, I've already talked about traditional projects includes the requirements of everything people need or what they think they may need or what they want or what they think they may want. It's almost guaranteed to use the word gold plate what's actually needed. DSDM offers a pragmatic approach which focuses on the business need and thus preventing bells and whistles being implemented. So by the use of prioritization, this ensures that the team are clear about the relative importance of the work to be executed. What does that look like from the perspective of the business? Well, there's normally a rule of diminishing returns. So when a project is trying to create a perfect product, the longer you take in doing so will mean the less the returns will be. Wouldn't it be far more sensible to make sure that you understand what the raw 80% or 20% is needed and ensure that that gets delivered first? The idea here is that when a product is deemed good enough, it is released into the operational area so that some benefits, if not all of them, can be delivered early. So these three aspects all work together, if you will, within this one slide. Here we realise that the greater depth of understanding makes sure that the end solution is a much better fit with the business requirements and needs. Here looking at reduced ROI, making sure that we get out the most important and most valuable features implemented early, and here preventing bells and whistles from being implemented and focusing by prioritization on what is the most important parts to be delivered first. So let's summarize how DSDM helps. Users are more likely to claim solution ownership because they're involved within the development team and therefore giving full buy-in to exactly what is to be delivered. The solution is most likely to meet the real business requirements by delivering the highest priority requirements first. The users will be better trained since they will have a representative within the development team. There is a far reduced risk of building the wrong solution because, as we've said, the solution is most likely to meet the real business requirements, and the handover from the project to the operational area, in other words deployment, is more likely to go smoothly since the cooperation of everyone has been ensured within the Agile project organization. Let's then look at key DSDM Atern features, reminding ourselves that Atern is an Agile project delivery framework delivering the right business solution at the right time. We'll see why that is shortly. Let's be clear that there's no big design up front. Instead, what Agile advocates is enough design up front. So why will an Agile project delivery via DSDM Atern give you the right business solution at the right time? Well, because the project team and stakeholders focus on the business outcome, with full agreement since business representatives sit within the team themselves. Delivery is on time by virtue of prioritization. Put simply, agreement will be reached before work commences on one of the highest priority features of a product and what can be dropped if necessary. In that way, we can fix time and control features. This will ensure an early return on investment. Everyone involved on the project work collaboratively together to deliver the optimum solution, whereas on traditional projects, there's often an us and them attitude, the project team and the customer. What DSDM Atern does is to actively involve the customer at all times during the project. Work is prioritized according to the business need, as I've mentioned, and the users accommodate changes within agreed timescale. I've already said that Agile welcomes change, indeed expects it, and is set up to accept it and deal with it. Quality is fixed from the outset. It is never compromised. There is no over or under engineering. No gold plating, if you remember. Now, Atern harnesses the knowledge, experience and creativity of the end users within the team itself. Atern uses an iterative life cycle to evolve the optimum solution in order to satisfy the business objectives. We'll see exactly what all this means in later modules. Now, the project manager and team member control is maximized by clearly defined roles and breaking the project down into short, immovable time frames. Remember, time is fixed with clearly specified and agreed outcomes. We'll learn these are called time boxes, and time boxes will be used at various levels throughout the project. Let's now look at why the Agile approach is so different. Here's something you may have seen before, and that's the holy triangle, so-called, or the iron triangle of time, cost and quality. In a traditional project, the variables are time and cost. And as a result of varying time and cost, in an effort to make sure the projects remain on track, they'll often be fed in extra resources, making it even later. And quality is also compromised. Why? Because as timescales slip and budgets overrun, then the only thing they've got to move is quality. So often full testing will not be done and it'll be shipped early, resulting in customer dissatisfaction. But in fact, the so-called iron triangle was actually a pyramid, if you like to see it this way. It also contains the features, the functionality, if you will. And in a traditional project, the features, the requirements, call it what you will, are fixed from the outset. Therefore, only time and cost can be varied. And as a result of those being varied, as I've just mentioned, quality will often suffer. What Agile does is turn this on its head. Here, what is fixed is time and cost, non-negotiable, and quality also is fixed. Therefore, the only thing which is varied in an Agile project approach are the features. How does it make this work? Well, it doesn't do what a traditional project does and throw extra resources at it. It does it by taking lower priority features and deferring them or dropping them in order to stay on track in terms of time. And by the way, if you're staying on track in terms of time, usually the highest cost is in human or labour cost, so that if you're on time, costs remain within budget. Something called the minimum usable subset, this is used within prioritisation, will be delivered on time and budget. Now, DSDM's well-defined high-level requirements make it easy to spot when an additional detail is needed versus when additions are requested to the project's breadth. This is called scope creep, another big killer on traditional projects. It's one thing having a high-level requirement and expecting more details to emerge later, another thing altogether when we actually find ourselves having to change what the customer wanted in the first place, and this is called scope creep. An important aspect to consider is that DSDM should be tailored to suit a project's unique needs. And that's an important point to bear in mind, particularly later when we start to look at some of the documentation. You'll learn that Agile emphasizes the use of human interaction and informal communication. And when first looking at the range of documentation, you may think that is at odds with that particular principle, but you'd be wrong. What you'll need to know is the major documentation that would be at your disposal and to decide how you're going to tailor it to suit a project's unique needs. And that includes all other aspects of an Agile project, as we'll learn later. Let's now just remind ourselves of the Atern philosophy. The DSDM Atern philosophy is that any project must be aligned to clearly defined strategic goals and to focus upon early delivery of real benefits to the business. I've told you this in effect many times already, so that should come as no surprise to you. So how do we make sure that this philosophy is met? Well, by ensuring that stakeholders at all time understand the key business objectives and that stakeholders are empowered to an appropriate level so that they can carry out their responsibilities. At all times, stakeholders must collaborate in order to deliver a fit-for-purpose and correct solution for the business. Part of this philosophy is to accept that change is inevitable. Let's then look at this very useful graphic which summarizes all of this. You'll see here that the philosophy is underpinned by 8 working principles, and it consists of processes, people, products and practices. The processes cover the project life cycle, the people covering their roles and responsibilities, a set of well-defined products. We're talking here about solution, management and business products, which we'll learn about in coming modules, and a set of practices or techniques. We'll look at the 8 working principles in the next module. So let's summarize this philosophy. Stakeholders must buy into this. It's absolutely key. And one of the reasons why is that stakeholders will get a working solution on the agreed date, but they will not get 100% of the solution, which sounds strange at this point. But when you remember I talked about prioritization, that will be agreed with the stakeholders. And by using prioritization, the less important features will be dropped with everyone's agreement. The negotiations are in the detail, not in the major headlines. In other words, as the project progresses, the requirements are better understood, the customers and users will refine their understanding, and change will be welcomed in order to reflect that. So it's within the detail that we'll expect most of the changes to occur, not the major headlines. Well, that brings us nicely to the end of Module 1, a fairly gentle and very high level overview. In Module 2, we'll be looking at the Atern principles and start to drill down to some of the detail. So thank you for your attention and thank you for your company, and we'll meet again on Module 2.